Sir, can you state your name and spell your name for the court reporter, please?
Yes. My name is Detective Jacob Garstin, Garstin.
Can you briefly professionally introduce yourself to the jury, that is to state your professional experience and training?
I graduated from the University of New Hampshire in 2013 with a bachelor's in sociology and justice studies and a minor in information technology. I have a master's in public administration from John Jay College, City University, New York in 2020. I graduated from the New Hampshire Police Standards Training Council Police Academy in 2015, and I've been a law enforcement officer for a little over 10 years.
And where is it that you have worked as a law enforcement officer?
For the Rochester Police Department in New Hampshire.
And can you briefly describe your progression of rank and duties through the Rochester Police Department?
Yes. So I was a patrol officer for about 5 years, and then I've been a detective for a little over 5 years as well.
And we've heard from other parties the job description associated, the distinction between patrol and detective, so I think we need to belabor that. I would like to move directly to whether or not you were working on April 4th of last year, 2024.
I was picking up a patrol overtime shift that day. And
did you have any involvement, respond to the investigation concerning this case, as you know, State versus Jason Levesque?
Yes.
Can you just describe how it is you first became involved with notified you?
There was a dispatch that there were shots fired on Summer Street, so all available units started heading in that direction.
So did you respond to the scene itself down to 4341 Summer Street?
Yes.
What was your job down there? What did you do?
So I arrived on scene, and patrol officers had Mr. Levesque currently detained, and they transferred custody of him to myself, and then I transported him back to the police station.
Were you with any other detective at the time?
At that time, while I was transporting him, no. It wasn't until I got back to the station that there was another detective there.
Okay. And can you confirm the very short distance between the scene and arriving back at the station?
Yes, it's police department is very close to where the incident took place.
And back at the station, did you, in fact, conduct an interview with Mr. Levesque?
I did.
I obviously want to spend some time on that, but I note that you had some other tasks which followed. Let's just go through those to address your investigative tasks associated with this case. Following the interview, looks like the next day, what did you do concerning this case?
So on the 5th, I reached out to the ATF to request a trace on the firearm to find out who the original purchaser was.
And were you able to follow that up with ATF assistance to actually conduct an interview of the genesis or origin of the firearm?
Yes.
Did you document that in your report?
Yes.
And then just to help things along here, my understanding is that on the 8th you requested all the dispatch and 911 tapes.
I requested all the dispatch tapes. I'm not sure on the exact date, but it was a couple days after.
And what was your reason for doing that?
To identify any other additional potential witnesses that we haven't spoken to. Also, if there was any excited utterances, during the heat of the moment, someone might say something that they might not remember later on.
And did you, in fact, listen to all those correspondence, the dispatches, and memorialize that, that is, take notes of it in your reports?
Yes.
Did you follow up on any potential leads for witnesses in the surrounding area?
Yes, we spoke to a number of witnesses, myself and some of the other detectives, to try and identify any other potential witnesses.
In your view, did the people that you spoke to who had made 911 calls have anything materially to add beyond what you were able to obtain from the people who were on the scene and the video that you obtained?
There is no real additional information that was gathered from those interviews.
I'm reviewing your report as well. Did you have any responsibilities concerning physical evidence in this case?
Yes.
What did you do?
So I believe it was on the 11th. I took the clothing from the drying rack, so anytime we have clothing that might be wet, we put into a drying cabinet so that way it can dry. I took the clothing and repackaged it, so for long-term storage.
And was that essentially the extent of your involvement with physical evidence concerning, scene analysis or anything along those lines?
Yes, I didn't do much on the scene. I did photograph the clothing as well prior to packaging it, but that was extended.
Let's see, did you, how far out, by the way, were you continuing to interview witnesses who were associated with the 911 calls?
So we identified all the witnesses that we could. We also checked social media. Any person that may have made a post that they could be a potential witness on social media, we reached out to try and talk to them as well.
And did you document those interactions and any statements people may have made?
Yes.
Once again, concerning social media, those contacts, did you determine, in your view, whether there was anything material to add to what detectives obtained from the scene and video evidence?
No, it was more that they heard the shots or that they had seen the police response, but nothing material.
Sounds like the heart of the matter for your involvement in this case was interviewing Jason Levesque.
Yes.
Let's talk about that.
Okay.
Describe for us the process then. You said you took him into custody down at the at 43 Summer Street. Just walk us through what happens next.
So whenever we take someone, whether they're detained or arrested or in custody, we would conduct a search to make sure that there's no weapons, contraband, firearms. He got transported to the police station in the back of my cruiser. He would be driven into the Sally Port. From there, I walked him into the booking area and then transported him via elevator up to the interview room.
And where did you ultimately take him?
To the interview room upstairs.
And talk to me about that interview room. Can you describe it for us?
Yeah, so it's a approximately 10 by 10, 12 by 12 room. There's a circle table in the room. There's 4 red hard plastic chairs.
And look, this is at something like 10:30 at night. Can you share with us, describe for us how Mr. Levesque, appeared to you?
He was able to communicate. He had expressed that he had been working prior to that he had picked up his daughter from work, and that he was going home to finish up his snow removal for his own home.
So before we get into the narrative, his account of sequence of events and things he heard and saw and did, I want to talk a little bit more about his appearance. You said he mentioned that he was at work. Did he share with you for how long he had been working?
Yeah, since approximately 10 p.m. the night prior.
24 hours at this point?
Yes.
Did he indicate to you that he was fatigued, tired?
He indicated that he was tired from plowing, yes.
And did you, in fact, try and address that in any way? Did you provide him with, for example?
Offered him coffee, gave him a moment to compose himself as well, and he indicated to me that he was able to proceed with the interview.
Let's be clear, the food you offered him was like a Slim Jim
yes.
along those lines. Did you ask him whether he wanted more than that?
I asked about food. I can't remember if I asked more than that. We did offer him some candy as well. It's hard to get food in the PD at 10:30, 10 o'clock at night.
Did he at any point, make any statements about his physical sensations, how he was feeling to you?
Yeah, at one point he did indicate that he was either lightheaded or dizzy.
Pardon me?
Sorry, at one point he did indicate that he was either lightheaded or dizzy.
And how did you respond to that, if you recall?
I asked him if he wanted EMS to evaluate him.
And what did he say?
He declined.
Did you continue to question whether he felt comfortable or capable of making a statement?
Yes.
Now, was there a period of time where you were, frankly, setting up? That is, did you go right into the interview, or was there a delay between arriving at the station and actually beginning the interview itself?
No, there's a little bit of a delay. There's usually some rapport building before you start talking about the specific matter at hand. Also some arrangement of the room, and we also had to gather a Miranda form that we could go over with Mr. Levesque.
And during this kind of setup process, did you recall whether or not Mr. Levesque actually asked to lie down, literally on the floor?
Yes.
And did you accommodate that?
Yes, we did.
Well, describe what he did.
He laid down at one point. We let him rest on the table when he wanted to rest. We didn't prevent him in any way from taking breaks when he needed.
And after that process where he said, I'd like to lie down, did you revisit whether or not he felt comfortable or capable of having a conversation?
I asked him multiple times if he was willing to, if he was okay, and if he needed any sort of assistance, or if he's willing to participate. Yes. And
from your perspective as an investigator, how did he appear during question and answering? Yeah, he was able to recall fine detail. He was able to articulate himself. He was able to recall memories as far as what happened. Was he responsive to specific questions, for instance? Yes. So was he oriented then to the topics that you were asking about? Yes, and even before the interview, he's asked basic questions as far as his name, address, date of birth, phone number. He was able to recall those. No difficulty doing those as well. Then I want to get into the substance of your conversation with Mr. Levesque. Okay. Did you ask him about the specific activities that preceded his contact with Kyle? Yes. Let's do this. Was this interview recorded? It was. And are you aware that there was a transcript generated of this recorded interview? Yes. Have you had an opportunity to review the transcript and the recorded interview? I have. Your Honor, I'd like to approach this witness. Well, I guess I can do this foundation. Do you recall each question and the specific words that Mr. Levesque used to respond to each question? No. Would using or referencing the transcript assist you in your memory and it being accurate concerning the words you used and the words Mr. Levesque used? It would be, yes. Your Honor, may I approach this witness?
You may.
Your Honor, my request is to leave a transcript with this witness to refer to from time to time rather than a back and forth.
I have no objection to that. My question is, does it make sense to have one copy of the transcript marked as an exhibit for ID purposes?
Well, first of all, it should be marked certainly for ID. I mean, we would prefer it all. So,
well, I understand that. We've had that discussion, and I'll allow you to remake that argument if you need to at a later point. But at this point, where it's going to be used to refresh his recollection, as I understand it? Or
if we could briefly approach.
Sure.
I have nothing without reading.
I'm sorry, what was that? 29. All right. So the transcript is now States Exhibit 29 for identification.
Yep, 29. Sir, can you just take a look at that and confirm? We were just talking about whether you'd seen a transcript of the video interview. Does that appear to be the transcript you were referring to? Yes. I just indicated I want to ask you some questions about the details of this conversation with Mr. Levesque. On page 33, line 25, is that the area where your question is about line 18, 19? And can you just read that to the jury? I asked, okay, and you said you were going to clear the driveway? What was his response? Yeah. And what did you follow up with? Okay, and what happened after that? And can you then describe Mr. Levesque's description of events before contact with Kyle on lines 22, following over the next page?
So I made a couple of passes, moving the snow towards 39 Summer Street. Then I turned around and I made one pass to grab the rest of it off the sidewalk and push it towards 43 Summer Street. Then I was going to backtrack the driveway, so I backed up and I got out to lock the hubs. They're the old manual locking hubs. They're not electronic or anything, so I got out to do that, and that's when he came up to the driveway.
And what was your understanding of what he meant by backdragging the driveway?
Sure, it's when you drop the plow and then pull it back instead of pushing the snow.
And so did you get into even a conversation about where that snow is going to go?
We didn't discuss the backdragging of snow to my knowledge, no.
Was it your understanding based on this description that Mr. Levesque had not completed his task of plowing his own driveway?
No, the driveway was still in the process of being plowed, is my understanding.
And the next question, did you ask him when it is and where it is that he first sees Kyle? I believe it's on line 6 and 7.
Yes, so I asked him, okay, where's the first place you remember seeing him?
And can you share his response, starting line 8?
Yes. When I heard him yelling, screaming, or making some kind of commotion. I honestly don't know what he was saying. I remember hearing a voice or something coming from that direction.
Let me just take a little side step here. At this point, had you received and reviewed the videos that were ultimately obtained from 43 and 41?
During the initial interview, no.
And so at this point, were you able to, for instance, compare this claim that he heard yelling and screaming from 43 with the actual audio video evidence?
I was not.
And then did you follow up to try and get a better sense of where it is he first saw Kyle in the following question, which I believe is at line 12?
Yes, so I asked him, okay, and when you say that direction, which, and he responded from 43 Summer Street.
And did you ask more specifically where at 43 Summer Street?
Yes, so I asked him, like the corner of the house, the garage, and he responded, the driveway.
And your response?
So I asked him, the driveway? Okay, so you look, I'm assuming you look over because you hear the noise.
And what's his answer?
Yeah, and there I saw him come from where I can finally see him coming out of the driveway. He was putting on his shirt. He was shirtless, so he was putting on his shirt.
And so his answer to you of when he sees Kyle for the first time, he's actually doing something. He's putting on that hoodie.
Correct.
And were you able to later view video and confirm that Kyle did in fact put on a shirt or a hoodie all the way back in his driveway at 43?
Yes.
And so now from here, did you get into questions about his actual appearance? You said you've established that his first time he notices Kyle, he hears something over there, and he actually sees him coming out of the driveway. I want to turn your attention to page 35. Did you try and get an understanding of what Jason claimed he saw in terms of Kyle's actions? And so I'm going to direct your attention to 35, line 6.
Yes, so I asked him, okay, so he was putting on a hoodie at that point. Describe, I guess, he's yelling at you.
Okay. And just before that, by the way, was he able to, even from that distance, give any kind of detail about the nature of the shirt that he was putting on? And this is line 1 at 35.
Yeah, he described it as either green or camo hoodie.
And so then we were just saying, after the hoodie, did you ask more specific questions about, say, distance and activity.
Yes.
Line 10, what do you ask?
How far away from the truck does he get at this point?
And what's his answer?
Oh, he's walking at a very fast rate towards the truck.
And did you ask him now about concerns for, say, weapons, or if he was brandishing anything?
Yes, so I asked him, okay, anything in his hands?
And what were his answers?
His initial answer was, I don't know.
And did you pursue that?
Yes.
Line 16, what did you ask him?
Okay, are you able to see his hands from where you're seated on the truck?
And what was his response?
Yes, I could see. I guess I could see his hands.
And did you follow that up at 22 and ask him whether he was armed or had anything in his hand?
Yes, so I asked him, okay, and you're not sure if you saw anything in his hands?
And what is his answer at 24, 25?
I don't believe I saw anything. He had his hands clenched in a fist, like.
And then on 36, does he continue to describe Kyle's hands?
Yeah, so I said, oh, like this, and demonstrated a fist, rather. And he responded, yeah.
Did he also demonstrate a fist?
Yes.
And did you go on to continue to ask about the details of what, if anything, was in Kyle's hands?
Yes. So I said, all right. But at that point, his hands are in a fist. Did you see him holding anything?
And what was his response?
I did not see him holding anything. I don't think so.
Is it your, I don't know if technique is the right question, but where somebody you're interviewing makes a statement or a series of questions, do you tend to kind of loop back towards it? Do you revisit the same questions at a later time in the interview?
Yes. For an interview, you might ask the same question multiple times in different manners.
Why?
One, to check consistency. Two, sometimes further on in the conversation, they might recall something that they did not recall at the time, but mostly to check consistency.
Page 98, line 12. Is that an example of you revisiting whether he had a weapon?
Yes.
And what was your question?
Had you seen him with any weapon or anything at any point during any of this exchange or in the past?
And his answer is 15, 16.
I don't know. I don't believe so. No, I don't believe so.
On that same page, and he's described earlier in this conversation where he's coming over to the truck at a very fast pace. He's got his fist clenched. Did you ask him here about his daughter at same page, line 9? Oh, excuse me, no, yeah.
Yeah, so on line 7, I asked, was he making any movements towards your daughter at that point?
And what was his answer?
No, he threatened me again, was just threatening me and I'm going to kill you and your family.
Okay. Then let's get to that, the threat. It seems like you've asked multiple questions about the threat. I'm going to go back to 36, which is the first description of this. You've asked him details like what he's wearing, if he sees any weapons in his hands, and then at line 15, 16, it seems like you're now getting into the the threat.
Yes.
Can you indicate this line of question?
Yes, so I asked him, sneakers, okay, so he's coming at you yelling, can you make out anything he's saying at this point?
And how did Mr. Levesque respond at line 18?
Yeah, he said, if you put that fucking snow at the end of my fucking driveway, I'm going to fucking kill you and kill your fucking family.
And did you ask, kind of any certainty or how specific that was? Can you give us the follow-up from that?
Yes, I asked him, okay, and just to make sure that we're not paraphrasing, is that the, and he responded, yeah.
And can you go on? What term does he use to describe it?
He describes it verbatim.
Is that his word?
Yes.
And on line 37, too, does he continue to confirm that those are the terms?
Yes, he says exactly what he said.
Did, at any point, I mean, you revisited the question about the threat.
Yes.
At any point, did it change to be more specific, say, towards hero or daughter or anything like that, other than beyond, first, if you move the snow, I'll kill you and your family.
Yeah.
Did it ever change?
From what I recall, it was the same conditional threat throughout.
And you described him, or you asked about the process of coming over, what he could see, what he heard. Can you describe then what he claimed about the actual encounter itself, where that occurred, how close that happened? Page 40, line 10, 11.
So I asked him, okay, and if he and if he reached out and put his hand on your shoulder, was that close, or, and he responded, closer.
And what did you say?
So I asked him again, closer, and he responds, because was literally his nose was touching my face.
And does he reiterate what was said when they were literally nose to nose or face to face?
Yeah, he reiterates, if you put that fucking snow there, I'm going to fucking kill you.
Put that fucking snow there? Did Mr. Levesque ever indicate what snow is going where?
I don't recall as far as specifics. I'd have to refer to a specific page if you have a reference.
And did it ever deviate from if you put snow somewhere, then I'm going to kill you and your family?
No, to my knowledge, it was still all the conditional threat throughout.
So he described to you a face-to-face, a nose-to-nose encounter combined with a threat. Did he describe what happened after the nose-to-nose encounter? Where did Kyle go? What did he do?
Yes, so after they exchanged words, or that rather that Kyle made the threat, that he started to walk away.
And then I want to direct your attention to page 45, line 12. Well, let's start at 10. That's Mr. Levesque's answer. Your question is at 7. Can you
Yes.
share your question?
Yeah, so I asked, all right, so he starts walking away, you said, and how far away did he get from you at that point?
What's his answer?
Well, my truck was parked. If this was my driveway right here, my truck's parked here, and he had made it to like the front of the house, and that's when he stopped and turned around and came back.
And did he describe on page 46 how he claimed Mr. Violet, how Kyle appeared when he turned around and started coming back, 46 line 10.
Yes. He said he's still very agitated. He's got his fist. He's very animated in how he's yelling. And just, he's going to fucking kill me and my family for moving snow, I guess.
And he claims at this point, while Kyle is in front of 43, that he's yelling these things, correct?
Yes.
And at this point, did you yet have the audio from 43 and from across the street?
We did not have the video or the audio at that point, no.
And did he describe to you on page 48 then what he did in response to Kyle walking back towards the house? This is 48 line 9.
Yes.
Well, can you just share your question on
Yeah.
line 8?
So I asked him what happened next, and Levesque responded, when he started coming back at me again, I didn't want to I went and drew my firearm and I pointed it at him.
What does he claim happened after he brandished, that is to take out and pointed his weapon at Kyle?
That Kyle continued towards him.
Well, can we be more specific? Line 13, same page. How does he describe Kyle coming at him after Mr. Levesque drew the weapon?
Yeah. And at that point, that's when he came at me. He was coming back at me like he was ready to go.
And did you kind of follow up on that? Actually, why don't you share with us your next question on 16?
Okay. So I said, okay, so let's kind of dissect that a little bit. And he responded, yeah. And then I asked him, so as far as he was coming at you, ready to go, help me understand what you mean by that.
And what did he say?
Like before, he kind of was, his hand was in a fist. Now he was coming at me like he was going to attack me.
And you respond to that?
I responded, okay.
And did he continue to speak of this?
Yes. And he said, or he was going to take the gun. I don't know what he was going to do, but he was coming at me. He was ready to go.
And this is his claim after he takes the gun out and points it at Kyle.
Correct.
And again, did you have the video to compare his words to the images captured on 4 different videos?
Not at that time.
Did you try and get even more detail on this notion of Kyle coming at Jason with his pointed weapon in terms of how he was able to infer that he was going to be attacked?
Yes, there would have been follow-up questions to that, yes.
For example, a follow-up question on line 3.
Yeah, so I asked him, okay, and what makes you think that? And he responded, I don't know how to describe that, but I'm sure if you saw somebody coming, you can tell if someone's coming at you and they're going to attack you. But if they're coming they want to take something from you or hurt you or whatever.
And did you have, again, did you revisit, did you confirm whether or not Mr. Levesque actually had the firearm out and pointed when Kyle is supposed to be coming at him to attack him?
Yes.
Is that again 49? I believe you asked a question at 14.
Yes, so I said, okay, was the gun out at that point when he was, and Levesque responds, yes. When he started coming back at me again, that's when I drew the gun.
And did you ask more details about how far away he got or how far away he was when the gun came out?
Yeah, so I asked, okay, how far away was he when the gun first came out? And Levesque responded, probably about 10 feet.
And you?
So I said, 10 feet? Okay, and did you see his hands at that point?
What was his answer?
Yes, they were clenched or, and I asked, they were still in fists, and he responds, fists, yeah, right.
And just to clarify, did you continue to really make clear that this is when he has the gun pointed? And your follow-up question, did you ask, well, where was anything about the gun?
Yeah, so I asked, to be perfectly clear, I was getting some more information. I asked him where the firearm was prior to this, where he drew the firearm from, if it was in a holster, where it was on his body.
And what did he say?
He said that, that he was in his waistband, in a holster, yes.
Okay. And did you use the term, and again, this is at line 3, page 50, prior to this description, these claims about what Kyle was doing?
Yeah. So I asked, and where was the firearm prior to this?
And what was his answer?
And he responds, in my waist.
And, just getting back to asking about Kyle's hands, at any point at this point, this is not the nose-to-nose, but where Kyle turns, does he claim that Kyle had a weapon or anything in his hands that could cause lethal injury?
At no point did he indicate that he had a weapon on him, no.
And his claim was that Kyle didn't stop, but rather came at him.
Yeah, that he continued to advance on him, yes.
In fact, you get into a little bit more detail about this on page 53. You asked a question at line 2. Can you share that?
And then you pointed at him, and he responds, yep. And I asked, and what does he do when he sees that?
And what are you referring to, pointed it at him?
The firearm.
Any question about that, reviewing the prior page? For instance, 52 and 118.
Yeah, so at 18 I said, so you pulled out the gun with the right hand, and when it comes out of the holster, where is it going from there? And he responds, in my hand like this, and he gestures with arms stretched out in front of him, imitating pointing the gun.
Got it. And so we were at the point where you're asking some follow-up about what Kyle does when he sees the firearm. Can you share Mr. Levesque's claim at line 6, page 53?
Yes. That's when I guess the best way to describe it, it looked like a rage, like that really infuriated, like he was angry. He was coming at me, and he was going to hurt me and take the gun, whatever, maybe.
And did you have some questions about that claim?
Yes, so I said, okay, what makes you, like I need you to be as detailed and descriptive as you can. And he responds, I saw him come at me, like the look in his eye, like he was angry, like he was pretty much gave me a look like it's you or me.
And did he describe how quickly, after the firearm is produced and pointed at him, how quickly Kyle continued to approach him?
Yeah, so I asked him, and when how was, I guess, his pace towards you? And he responded, he was coming at me right at, I think, at a pretty fast rate. So then I asked him, did that change at all from before the firearm was drawn? And he responds, yeah.
And what's your next question?
All right, so he walked, and Levesque responds, he quickened when I drew the firearm.
And your next question on 54.
So I asked again, okay, so he went towards you faster, and he responds, yes. And I finished my question, once the firearm was drawn, okay, how was it prior to the gun being, I know it was slower, but are we talking like he was walking? And Levesque responds, no, he was walking, a fast walk.
All right. I'm going to ask again. You've advanced a number of pages in the transcript and sequence in terms of the narrative. At this point, when he's claiming not only did Kyle continue to walk at him after he produced the gun, but he actually increased his pace towards Mr. Levesque. have an opportunity to review the actual video at this point?
At this point now.
Did you actually have an opportunity to review the actual video of how Kyle responded once the firearm was brandished or produced?
Sorry, can you repeat that?
Did you have an opportunity to view this moment when how Kyle responded in the video when Jason brandished or pointed the firearm?
No, as I had not had the video, access to the video at that point.
Does Mr. Levesque explain to you what happened as a result of Kyle continuing to advance towards him in a rage and rapidly closing the distance?
He does.
What does he claim?
And as soon as I saw that look in his eye, I knew I had to protect my family, and I pulled the trigger. So then I asked him, okay, do you remember how many times the trigger got pulled? And he responds, yeah, 6 times.
And what do you ask?
Okay, so you fully emptied the clip at that point? And he nods in an affirmative. And then he says, so the first one that I first shot, it hit him. He turned around and he walked away. And he turned back and he came at me again.
I'm sorry, he said that after he fired the shot, he continued to come at him?
Yes. Sorry. So the first one that he shot, it hit him. He turned around to walk away, is what he said.
Okay, and then what happened? He's walking away?
So he's walking away, and he said that he turned back and to come at him again at that point.
All right. Do you continue to follow up on that claim on 55 line 2 and 3?
Yes. So I said, all right, so you said that he turned to walk away, and is that where you said after the first shot? And he responds, mm-hmm.
We had talked earlier about you looping back later to the same topic, same subject. Did you do that concerning this moment after the shot was fired?
Yes, later on I did, yes.
I direct your attention then to page 105, line 17.
I'm sorry, what was that page reference, counsel?
I'm sorry. Just confirming his actions prior to the actual shot. This is 105, Your Honor.
Thank you.
And Detective Garson, I direct your attention to 105, line 15 through 16.
Yes, so Detective Flathers asked, what was his reaction to you pulling out the gun? And Mr. Levesque responded, that's when he got angry, like he got really angry, or like more aggressive, or I don't know what word I'd ought to use, but you'd think he was not happy, like he wanted to come, he was going to get, hurt me or take the gun, or something like that.
And then at 106, line 2, does he continue to make this claim? Or actually, is it Detective Flathers continue to ask questions?
Yeah, so Detective Flathers asked, so you're taking out the gun didn't make him stop where he was?
What is his claim?
Levesque responded, right.
I think I forgot to do with some basic housekeeping. You just mentioned Detective Flathers. Can you tell us when Detective Flathers came into this interview?
So he was in the first part of the interview, some of the last part of the interview he had stepped out.
Okay. And can you just identify Detective Flathers for the record and for the jury?
Yeah, Detective Flathers is one of my coworkers. He works for the Rochester Police Department, and he has been working for the police department before I got hired on there, so it's at least over 10 years.
Let's talk then about your inquiry concerning the the shooting itself. He talked about brandishing a firearm and his claims about Kyle's response to that. Page 55.
Okay.
17, you asked a question concerning the actual gunshot.
Yes. Okay, and he's coming towards you, so 5 feet or less, the first shot goes off. Do you know where roughly on his body, though, it hit?
What's his claim?
No.
In fact, you continue to press that.
Yes, so I said, okay, do you know if it actually physically hit him, the first shot? And he responds, I think so.
And is this an area that you revisited later in your interview?
Yes.
I'm going to direct your attention to page 111, 1 through 2. What was your question?
Was it your intention to stop him, to kill him, something else, like
What's his claim?
just stop him?
And do you follow up on that?
Yes. So I asked to stop him. Okay. Did any of that change during the next series of shots that went off?
How did he answer that?
No, the first one didn't. I think it affected him he heard the shot, but it didn't stop him.
I'm sorry. So his claim at this point for how Kyle reacted after being shot in the head was it didn't seem to affect him.
He indicated that the first shot didn't stop him, yes.
He didn't describe him going down to the ground.
No.
And this was in response to your question about what was your intent, to stop him or kill him?
Yes.
Page 54, this appears to be also in the same area of inquiry. I'm going to direct your attention to 54 lines 21 through 23.
So Levesque says, so the first one that I first shot, it hit him. He turned around to walk away, and he turned back and he came at me again.
Okay, we had just visited that, and so now he's indicating that he had struck Kyle with the first shot, but actually describes him walking away and then turning around and coming back at him. Am I understanding that correctly?
That's what he indicated at that time, yes.
Does he describe him going down on the ground and crawling away?
Not during the initial interview, no.
You indicated that you had asked him about the distance that he shot him the first shot. You recall how far away he claimed it was? This is 55, 9 and 10.
Yes. So Levesque says, the first shot was a pretty close distance. I would say maybe 5 feet or less.
And do you remember whether Mr. Levesque claimed that he actually closed the distance or whether he stayed put and it was Kyle who closed the distance to supposedly 5 feet?
Yes. So I asked him, and you were still standing at this point. You hadn't gotten back down or anything, I'm assuming, right? You're still on your feet? And he responds, yeah. And I asked, okay, and he's coming towards you, so 5 feet or less. The first shot goes off. Do you know where roughly on his body that would hit? And he responds, no.
At 55 line 21, you asked, do you know if it actually physically hit him, that first shot? Do you recall his response at 23?
He says, I think so.
And did you follow up on that?
Yes, I asked him what makes him think that.
And how does he describe his basis for thinking, he might have hit him at 25?
So he responds from the way he moved, like you could tell something hit him. It's cut off. Maybe it didn't, maybe it was just the...
Can you back up to line 1?
Yes.
And reread that on page 56. Did we give you a bad copy?
Yeah, it looks like some of it was cut off.
I'm going to approach this witness, Your Honor.
Please.
How pervasive is that? That's pretty bad. I'm going to show you is a better copy and ask Your Honor, and for the record, this is 56 continuing on to line 1.
Yes. So you could tell maybe something hit him. He flinched, or maybe it didn't. Maybe it was just the noise. Like he reacted to it, I guess would be the best way to describe it.
Did you say flinch?
Flinched, yes.
And that's according to Mr. Levesque's claim.
Yes.
And he added, maybe it was just the noise that he was responding to?
Yes, he said maybe it was just the noise, like he reacted to it.
So from his claim of being 5 feet away and discharging the firearm, he doesn't indicate, yeah, I shot him in the side of the head and he fell to the ground.
That's not what he indicated at that time, no.
He flinched as though he might be reacting to noise.
Yes.
And did you follow up on that, 56, line 5 and 6?
Yes, I asked, did you hear him make any sounds or say anything? And he responds, I don't know if I heard him say anything. I mean, the gunshot did just go off kind of loud, but I did see him react as in either it was the noise or something had hit him, or it surprised him. But he was definitely a reaction from it.
Okay, so he doesn't change that initial claim that it was maybe he was hit. He actually commits to it. It provides a little bit more detail. That maybe Kyle was surprised by the sound of the gun.
Yes.
And did you follow up and ask, more about Kyle's reaction to this gunshot going off?
Yes, I asked, okay, does he stay on his feet? And Levesque responds, yeah.
Okay. This is in reference to the first gunshot going off. And he's described his reaction to it as maybe being surprised, maybe surprised by the noise. But you ask physically, what does Kyle do? And his claim was Kyle stayed on his feet after being shot?
That's what he indicated, yes.
And does he describe what Kyle did after staying on his feet somehow?
Yes, so I said when the first shot goes off, and you said he turned, which way did he turn? And Levesque asked, so you mean like counterclockwise or clockwise? And I clarified saying, like which direction was he turning? So Levesque says, so then he turned, he was still heading for me, he started going back towards his house.
And did you get more specific? So initially, he claims he's actually continuing to head towards Jason Levesque.
Yes.
But then he turns to his house. Did you ask for more details on that?
I did.
What did he say?
So I said, and how many steps did he make before he turned around a second time? He responds, a couple. So I said, so he went a couple of steps, and then did he say anything or do anything, or just kind of turned his body around? And he responds, he turned his body back around.
And he turned his body back around. His claim is that he turned his body back around towards towards Jason.
Towards Mr. Levesque, yes.
And let's focus in on what he claims happened next. This is 57, line 3.
Yeah. So Mr. Levesque says that he turned his body back around. So I ask, all right, and then what happens? And Mr. Levesque responds, and then I unloaded the gun.
So This claim is that Kyle, after being shot, turns back towards Jason on his feet before the next rounds of ammunition, the next 5 rounds go off.
Correct.
Didn't it say anything about him being on the ground?
Not at that time, no.
And did he actually make any claims about the distance that Kyle closed on Jason before he fired 5 more rounds? This is a continuation of 57.
Yes. So I say, and how far away was he when those next 5 shots went off? And Mr. Levesque responds, a couple of feet. So I asked to clarify. And just to be clear, I want to make sure, what's a couple of feet? Mr. Levesque says, I would say 3 feet, 5 feet. And then I ask, all right, so he was about 3 or 5 feet away? And Mr. Levesque responds, yeah.
Okay. From that distance, standing in front of him, did you ask anything about the injuries or the shots connecting in any way?
Yeah, so I asked, and do you know if any of those shots connected? And he responds, I'm guessing, while nodding his head in affirmative, just due to the fact that he ended up like how he was holding himself, and he started walking back towards his house, like holding him like he had been hit.
That after taking the 5 additional rounds, Jason Levesque describes him holding himself and walking back to his home?
Correct.
Do you ask any follow-up for detail on that claim?
Yes, so I said, okay, where was he holding himself? And Mr. Levesque responds, I believe on his abdomen. So I ask him his abdomen, and Mr. Levesque responds, yeah.
Is this the kind of detail you were referring to at the outset of our conversation when you said Mr. Levesque seemed responsive to your questions?
Yes, he was able to answer questions asked in multiple different manners and provide fine detail as well.
Did he ever say, you know, look, I don't even know what you're talking about anymore about firing the gun or where he was positioned? Did he ever invoke to you, you know, this basic confusion, you know, I'm too tired?
Later on in the interview, when he did ask to put his, to think for a minute, to have a moment, where he put his head down, but then he was able to clarify. But at that point in the interview, no.
Was that after you shared the fact that investigators were looking at video?
That we indicated that we had finished the initial investigation, that we had spoken witnesses, that we had a video, yes. And in fact, during that time too, we asked basically for me to reiterate what he had previously had said at that point.
Just to continue on the detail associated with him holding his abdomen after being shot 5 additional times. Did you ask some follow-up questions for detail? Page 58, for instance, lines 4 to 5.
Yes, I asked him if he saw any blood or anything at that point, and he responded that he didn't.
Couple of follow-up questions. You said that Mr. Levesque consented to the sharing video, giving you access. I just want to clarify this concept of consent. If you could share with us, you know, really what are the 2 main avenues available to law enforcement to obtain physical evidence?
Sure. Typically, whenever law enforcement is trying to get evidence, as the counsel had mentioned, there's typically 2 manners. The first one being consent. So someone can voluntarily provide consent as long as they're the owner of the property or have some sort of constructive ownership of the property. The other one being a search warrant. So we basically ask for a permission slip from the judge granting us permission to either search or seize some property.
And so consent, is this something you're familiar with utilizing, not in this case, more broadly speaking, as a tool to enhance investigations?
Yes, we get consent all the time in cases from both victims, suspects, witnesses, from a good amount of people throughout the course of investigations.
Let's focus on suspects. What's your experience in suspects of crimes granting you consent that subsequently leads to damning or incriminating evidence? The defendant, Mr. Levesque, about what he did after the shots were fired.
Yes.
And I'm going to direct your attention to page 61. And I think your question is line 4.
So I asked him, what did you do at that point? And he responds, I got back in the truck.
Did you follow up for more detail?
Yes. And Mr. Levesque goes, and I took the clip out of the gun and put the gun up on the dashboard and sat there and thought what would be the best thing to do or safest thing to do before any of you guys got there. I knew you were coming, and I pulled the truck into the driveway so I was out of the road. And I had tried the phone to call 911, but then I heard the sirens coming, so you guys were already on your way.
And did you ask him about any conversations he may have had with his daughter?
Yes. So I said, okay, did you talk to your daughter at all within the truck? And Mr. Levesque responded in the affirmative. And then I further clarified, what was the conversation you had with her? And Mr. Levesque said, I said, Kira, I'm sorry. I said, I'm sorry. That shouldn't have happened in front of you. And she said, it's okay. You're protecting me, I know.
And did he make any admissions about asking Kira whether he should run or not?
Did he make?
Yeah.
He did not say that at that time, no.
Did he provide any details about a conversation where Kira was giving him advice not to run?
No, he didn't indicate that, no, not during our interview.
We had talked a little bit about how he appeared and his sharing that he was quite fatigued when he first came down to the police station. Did you follow up, or did he make any statements concerning how that may have impacted his judgment back at the scene? And I want to direct your attention, I guess, first to page 75.
So Flathers asked, yeah, worked 24 hours, and Levesque responded, yeah, and I was up all day the night, and I was up all day the day before because they didn't call me till 6 o'clock to say that I was going in at 10.
And on line 13, did he indicate how that may have factored in at all?
So he responds, yep, maybe that's why I was laying down. Maybe it's just I've been overwhelmed. I don't know. I'm sure that it probably has something to do with my, probably making a bad decision and not thinking clearly.
A bad decision and not thinking clearly?
That's what he said, yes.
And does he make any references to that again? I'm going to direct your attention to page 150, line 12.
So at that point in the interview, Mr. Levesque says, if I wouldn't have been up that long, it probably would have had a different outcome. I don't know. Who knows?
Like if he hadn't been tired, he wouldn't have shot Kyle?
That's what he was expressing, how I took it at least.
As you know, Attorney Sistu like to have some follow-up. Okay.
Thank you. Good morning.
Morning.
Let me go through some preliminary stuff with you too, because the jury heard that this entire interaction with Jason was video recorded, correct?
So while Jason was in the room, yes, it would be recorded on my body cam, correct?
Right, and that means that you have a video recording of the interaction at the Rochester Police Department that would be full and complete, correct?
Of when I was interacting with Jason, correct?
Correct. And that video recording would also show the jury what Jason looked like that night, right?
It would.
And that video recording would more perfectly explain what he looked like rather than your answer to some questions, right?
Video would show more accurately someone's description than my words, but I could also articulate as far as what he was wearing or what he looked like because I was there.
Yeah, what he was wearing and what he looked like. How about what his face looked like and how he looked as far as being alert and physically fit? How about that?
If you had specific questions about that, I could try and recall as far as what your questions were, yes?
But we actually have video of how he looked, right?
Correct.
We actually have video of him and how he was affected by being up for over 40 hours, correct?
There's video, yes.
Okay. And there's video of him literally laying down, trying to rest, right?
There's video, yes, of him resting.
There's
Correct.
video of him telling you that he's feeling hot, right?
Correct.
There's video of him being helped by you so he could sit down, right?
When we're first walking into the interview room, yes, he was escorted into the room, yes.
Right? And you didn't want him to stumble or fall, right?
Correct. I do not want him to stumble or fall.
Right. And he's complaining about being hot, right?
At one point, he was complaining about being hot, yes.
About being exhausted,
Yes.
about being overwhelmed.
Yes.
And in fact, you're concerned to the point, before we're getting into any of this question and answer, about whether EMS should be called, right?
Yeah, so obviously, whenever we have someone in custody, there's a concern about liability. So if there's any concern about someone makes an expression that they're, tired or shaky, we'll at least offer up EMS. Whether or not they take it, as long as they're competent, they're able to make that decision for themselves.
And he did express that he was tired, right?
Correct.
That he was shaky, right?
Yes.
That he was dizzy,
Yes.
that he needed to lay down,
He has to lay down, yes.
right? And he did say that he was confused at times, didn't he?
Confused, I'd have to look at a specific reference if there was.
He may not have gotten things right. He told you that.
Later on in the interview, yes, he expressed that he may have not gotten things right the first time once he was confronted on some of the other information we had, yes.
And you were very understanding on that video, weren't you, Detective?
So, yes, as part of the interview process, we are trained basically that you get more information by being able to talk to people. If you're coming at someone a little bit harder, you're less likely to get information.
No,
Yes.
that's very understandable, but it's also understandable that he was going through some trauma at the time, too.
Trauma?
You suggested he was going through trauma, that it was a traumatic experience.
Sure, of course, it would be a traumatic event for anybody for a gunshot to go off and shoot somebody.
Right. All right, so let's go through this a little bit. We've got a video that would more clearly and specifically express his mental state, right?
The video would be able to show basically how he was that day, yes.
Right. His physical and mental situation at the time of the interview, right?
It would be able to show how he was that day, yes.
Yes, and it would be specific with regard to some of these questions that were asked by the prosecution, right?
It would be the same answers and responses from the transcript, but yes, it would be specific.
Well, there'd be a heck of a lot more questions than answers, wouldn't there?
Yes, it would be the entire interview, yes.
Yeah, the entire thing could be shown to the jury, and they would see the whole thing.
The objection is sustained. At this point, ladies and gentlemen, I am going to instruct you that there are circumstances and times when there is potential evidence or information that the jury is not always allowed to see because of various rules of evidence. And the mere fact that there might be some evidence that you have not been able to see, you should not draw any inference from that fact. Questions as to the admissibility of evidence and what evidence comes in or doesn't come in is for the court to make. Those are decisions that I make based upon the law, and so you're not to draw any inference one way or the other from that fact. Attorney Sisti, you may continue with your questioning.
Thank you. So let's start from the beginning of your interaction with Jason. You described escorting him into the station and taking him to a specific room,
Yes.
and you went up an elevator, I guess, to that specific room?
Yes, we took the elevator from lower booking up to the ISB interview room.
And right at the beginning of this particular interaction, Jason described to you that he was dizzy.
He indicated during the elevator ride that he was getting dizzy, yes.
Yes. And this would have been at or around, what, 10:30?
Somewhere around there, yes.
Shortly after the shooting incident.
Correct.
And he says he's dizzy, and that was just when you started
When we started what, sorry?
talking to him.
Talking to him, we didn't talk to him about specifics at that point. We were just bringing him into the room, get acclimated, build rapport at that point, yes.
Yeah, it was the first contact you had with him. He's already telling you that he's dizzy, right?
Yes, that's why I asked him if he would like EMS.
Right. And it was at that point in time you asked whether or not EMS should be called in, right?
I asked him if he would like EMS, and he indicated no.
You told him that it's not unusual, right, that in fact his body is reacting to stress.
Correct.
And let me just ask you as an aside, have you been involved in any officer shootings, anything?
I've been on scene for one, but I wasn't directly involved with it, no.
I mean, let's go right to it. Have you ever discharged a firearm during the course of your service?
No. Not at somebody, I'll say that. I've discharged it as part of training and as annual qualifications, those kind of things.
Right, but never during a situation where it was discharged and actually a round struck a human being.
No.
And even in your business, as trained police officers, you know for sure that your body would react in such a situation.
Correct.
And in fact, in your situation, the policy is there's a cooling off period before you make a statement.
I'd have to look at the policy. What do you mean by cooling off?
Objection sustained.
You haven't been involved in an officer-involved shooting, right?
I have not been directly involved in an officer-involved shooting, yes.
But you sympathize with Mr. Levesque that he would be experiencing stress, right?
Sympathize might not be the correct word. I'm doing an interview. I'm trying to build rapport, yes.
Well, you're trying to, doing a couple of things. You're trying to, establish rapport, but you're also trying to make sure he's okay.
Yes.
Then you go over some medical stuff with him. You want to know whether or not he has any pre-existing medical condition?
I asked him at one point in the interview, yes, if he had any pre-existing medical conditions.
And you want to make sure he's sitting down so he doesn't fall, right?
For safety purposes as well, yes. I would like for him to sit down or lay down, not be on his feet.
And without him even asking, you offered him some water so he can relax, right?
For him, water, coffee, food, it's part of my training for interview and interrogation. As far as that, you typically, especially if someone had been out working all day, you want to make sure that they have access to bathrooms, access to food, that we're not treating them unfairly.
Yeah, we don't want to do that. And the other thing is that, again, as the prosecution said, the food that was offered was like pretty minimal, right?
It was a beef jerky stick and candy. That's all Flathers was able to come up with while I was with Jason, yes.
Let me ask you, do you know what he had eaten over the past 40 to 42 hours?
I don't know, no.
Isn't that something you generally ask to make sure that he's okay?
Again, I offered him food and water. As far as generally, I don't know if I've ever asked somebody when the last time you've eaten on an interview.
When's the last guy that you interviewed that had been up for over 40 hours?
I don't know if I've been in this unique circumstance before as far as interviewing someone that's been up.
Right. That's an extreme amount of time to be up without any sleep, isn't it?
You're asking someone that does shift work.
Yeah.
It's, as far as answering questions, I mean, I think everyone in the room has at one point in time stayed up all night and either had college courses or tests or final exams or kids. It was my understanding based on his responses and how he interacted that day that he was able to articulate himself.
Articulate himself, and that would be something that was, again, something that would have been on the video.
Correct.
You knew he had worked all day, not only just stayed up all day for 40 hours, but was working. Right?
Yes, I've worked for a plowing company before. I know what kind of work it is, yes.
Right, and it can be very exhausting.
Probably less so for driving the truck, but yes, it is still exhausting.
Right, I mean, you don't know what else he was doing. Was he loading salt too that night?
He did indicate at some point that he handled salt, yes.
So he'd been in and out of the truck, right?
He would have had to handle the salt, yes.
You don't know if he was doing any hand shoveling either, right?
I don't believe that came up during the conversation.
Did you ask?
I don't recall.
At one point you said, if you feel like you need EMS, or if you just want water, Levesque says that would probably be good, right?
Is there a page in line that you're
Yeah, it's
referencing?
page 9, lines 3 through 6.
Yes, he responds, that would probably be good, yeah.
And then you take his handcuffs off so he can eat and drink, right?
Yes, I say, I'm going to have you stand up, take the cuffs off for you so you can eat and drink, still feel good, not like you're going to pass out, right?
And he says, no, I'm still wobbling.
Correct.
So at the point he sits down in the interrogation room and the cuffs come off, he's wobbling.
Is what he's saying, yes.
Yeah. I mean, he's expressing to you his physical condition.
Correct.
And you said, I'll have you sit down after just because I don't want you to fall.
Correct, and he says, I appreciate that.
Right. And you respond, yeah, no, it's traumatic, I'm sure. So you can have a seat. And if you want to take your hoodie off, right?
Correct.
If that makes you more comfortable if you're hot, right?
Yes.
And then he asked permission to take it off.
Correct.
And that's when you notice some blood on his hand?
Yes.
Do you ever figure out where that blood came from?
I asked him about it. He never clearly indicated where it came from, no.
Right. In fact, he was kind of mystified by it as well, right?
That's what he expressed, yes.
So he doesn't even know where the blood, and it was on was it his left hand?
Correct.
He doesn't even know at that point in time, while he's sitting there with noticeable bleeding, where the blood would have even come from, right?
Yes, and to be clear, it was very minimal blood.
Right. You noticed it.
Yes,
Okay. He apparently didn't even notice it.
correct,
And then you drew his attention to it. Right?
correct.
And then he said, I don't know where it even came from. Basically.
To something to that effect, yes.
Now, you want to give him some time to compose himself, right?
Correct,
And this is where you start building the rapport with him, right?
yes,
But right out of the gate, to direct your attention, where it's nice to meet you and so forth, on the bottom of page 11,
okay,
where he says, my name is Jason,
correct,
and you introduce yourself as Jake,
yes,
and then basically he says, nice to meet you, Jake. Wish it was under different circumstances, right?
correct.
I'm going to object to continuing. It's just hearsay.
Can we approach? And ladies and gentlemen, we are ready to continue with the continuation of the cross-examination of this witness. Counsel, you may proceed.
Thank you very much, Your Honor, and thank you guys for being patient. Detective, let me just give a little introduction of what we're going to be doing here. We're going to play some of the video that was captured on your cam that evening, I believe, right?
Yes, sir.
And it starts at 10:17:09 p.m. and it's dated the 4th of April, and the location is 41/43 Summer Street. That's what we got going, and you're aware of what we're about to do.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Let me give a little introduction here. It's going to take about probably 25 minutes total recording. Some of it is dead time. You'll see some transport and detective. Some of it will be a muted body cam. Can you tell the jury why that happens? I mean, we're not trying to sneak around here. Just want to make sure.
Sure. Sometimes we'll mute a body cam when we're by our personal spaces. People have family photos. There's other case information that necessarily we don't want getting out.
But can you tell us generally what we're about to see? We're going to see a bit of the transport and the initial processing. Can you explain to the jury where we're going to go, what we're going to be in, etc.?
Sure. So as we kind of previously had talked about, this is going to show my initial response, showing up on the scene, and the actual transport of Jason back to the police station, and then transporting him up on the elevator to get back upstairs.
Okay. And can we assure the jury that we're going to be able to see some questioning, but they'll be able to see the condition that Jason was in on that evening when the questioning began?
You'll be able to see Jason before he was interviewed, yes.
Thank you. If we could start that up. And I'm not going to say a word during this. Afterwards, I may have some questions.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Just step down.
Yes, sir.
Just so the record is clear, this is a full exhibit, correct?
That is correct.
Defendant, thank you. the height of the line goes down?
Just know you're also being the other way. So I'm just getting here. I don't know what's going on. So just you're just being detained at this point. Okay. I have to check that. So, is he just detained? Sorry, I can't hear. Oh, no worries. That's what we're getting paid to do. So we're gonna just head back to the station. We'll kind of talk there just because it's kind of not the best environment with people yelling and stuff like that. And we'll kind of talk over there. Get out of the weather too, stay dry. 6 vehicles. Being transferred one detail is being ordered and to be approved tunnel. Perfect. Six years of fathers. We're not making nothing nice people. Six vehicles, 7. Sally, please. built it as well upstairs where it's a little drier and kind of talk about it. Sorry. No, you're fine. Any injuries, anything you need EMS to check out? Anything that changes, not good or anything like that? Just like that. 24-hour shift. What do you do for work? You come in. Yeah, it's tough. It's tough before I was a cop. I did construction and I need some guys that not plowing, but show where the plow trucks. That's all my work. Yeah. So we'll head. Just have civil wires. Yeah, I'll get you a couple orders. Something like that. Plan all day too. You want any food or anything? Okay, yeah, I can make sure that happens. Yeah, Mr. Dave, we'll wait for the other item on that. Come on board. Just let me know when you get upstairs and there's chairs on the table. Okay, I just thought if you just want you to know about this. Okay. What's up? How much are you on the elevator? As soon as you go upstairs, we'll be sharing the tables. How much to sit down? And if you feel like you want us to check you out, something like that, more than welcome to ask me, and I will make sure to mess with those. We'll get you seated. Someone that's just your body, your neck conditions. Do you have any medical conditions or anything? No. Are you good walking for a second? Just get to the chair. I'll help you out. Yep. And slip over there. That's fine. I'll get you some water just to kind of relax some nerves a little bit. So this room is also the audio filter. I have to see you for 1 second. I'll give you a cup of water. I just want to make sure it's on the screen. Let me come down here. Do you mind actually, you go downstairs, there's a kitchen. Just go right downstairs. There's a kitchen in the cabinet top. There should be a house, a bigger house. You get that, just listen where this one. So doing okay? So okay, you find it. I'll talk to the article. So if you give me food, fine. This is food. Yeah, I see. Cats. Thanks. So he's going to get you some food, and then the other guy's going to get some water. I know it's especially plowing all day. Long day. Okay. You don't have any food allergies or anything like that? Do you do like commercial, residential kind of combination? Okay. How long have you been doing it? Do you work for them for outside of snow, or is it just or so like your day to day? What do you do for like a day? When you day-to-day? Oh, nice. Where do you do that? Okay. Yep. Right on 108 there. Yeah. How long have you been doing do you do experience all these? Years, months, yeah. All that's via sound or okay. Again, if you feel like you need EMS or you just want water, so man, just stand up, take the cross off. So feel good about like you're gonna pass out. Well, I just sit back down. Just gonna want you to fall. Yeah, no, it's traumatic, I'm sure. So you can sit, see, and if you want to take your footy off, calm. Yeah. Looks like you got some blood on your hand and others. Food. And if anything changes, you feel like you're too lightheaded, let me know. Yep, so I just gotta go over some paperwork and stuff. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I know, I hear you. I just want to make sure that you're aware of your rights and everything else too. You know, you sound pretty straight up honest. It sounds like this was kind of like something happened that wasn't planned, is what it seems like. So I just want to get, there's two sides to the story. So I just want to hear what your version of events and we'll kind of go from there. But I want to make sure that you're fully aware of what's going on before they're talking. So make sure you get a second to compose yourself or some words. Especially if you have one. just gonna check on you. You're good to just hang out here. Hear anything like that? Just help yourself to the future of East Bay and where kind of all the But you won't lay down in the world, so. You feel like you're going to pass out? Do you want any mess? That's fine. Yeah. Yeah, no. You know, okay. No, I just want to just talk to this guy while he's still going and talk to us. All right. I'm going to take mine off, yeah. Do you have the cameras up? Yeah, if you want to try and get that up too, I'll just be... I can't open that key anymore anyway. Can I, if the room's video recorded, I can stop the body camera at this point, right? I'll just record on my phone too, or should I? Do you have that mount? I think mine's on my desk for the other one. Yeah, just put it on the table. Do that. Alright. Why don't you go do Flather's desk? And I'll show you as far as getting the computer set up so you can watch. Here. I don't. So then, okay. Yeah. Yeah, if you want to share on. What's the spelling of your first name? J-A-S. And J. What's the last name? L-E-V-E-S. I'll pronounce it that. Which one? In a different one. In
started that video at 4143 Summer Street at around 10:17 p.m. and it ends about a half hour later, approximately. Okay?
Okay.
And that's just the beginning of your contact with Jason on April 4th, 2024, right?
Yes, sir.
And that's what he looked at like at the very beginning of your contact.
Yes, sir.
And how many hours went by before you broke off with Jason?
When I last had contact with him or stopped because we took a number of breaks throughout.
Yeah, when was the end of the interrogation?
The whole body cam footage, I believe, is about 3 hours and 40-something minutes.
Okay, so it went on more than 3 hours from the time it cut off there, right?
From my initial response time before the camera started rolling for today, all the way till the end of my contact with Jason, yes.
Can we safely assume that he wasn't given like an hour to sleep or anything?
It wasn't a full hour, no.
In fact, basically you would leave the room at times and he would just lay down on the table.
Correct. He had also indicated that he would like to speak with me, so that was part of the other discussion that was going on as well.
Oh yeah, I mean, you guys went through an entire, give and take for quite a long time.
I'm not sure what you mean by that, sir.
Well, I mean, after we cut off on that video, you kind of basically started by building that rapport with him.
We had a conversation and then we started going into some of the details after reading him his Miranda rights.
Yeah, after you gave him his Miranda rights, right?
Correct.
Yeah. And before you gave him his Miranda rights, you kind of did your introductions with him.
Yes.
And you made clear to him that you just wanted to hear his side of the story.
Something to that effect, yes.
Yeah, to the effect of you knew that it went pretty quick that night, and you just wanted his side of the story.
Correct.
And then you went over the Miranda rights with him, and then you basically said, the floor is yours. Tell me what the heck happened. Right?
Yes, I left it very open-ended to start, so that way he could tell me what had gone on that night.
What he told you that went on that night was that he was plowing, and plowing in front of his home and the home of the, actually not even plowing in front of the home of the alleged victim.
So he said that he had done a couple passes, so he hadn't really started going too extensive with the plowing, but yes.
He never told you that he was plowing any snow onto the alleged victim's driveway or anything?
He mentioned doing, I believe, if I'm correct, about 2 passes one way and then 1 pass the other. I'm not sure if he went into detail as far as where the snow ended up. If there's a certain line that you want me to reference, I can certainly look at that.
Yeah, but I mean, you actually looked at independent videos and you came to your own conclusion.
At one point later in the interview, I was able to watch some independent video, yes.
Right. And he only plowed up to that utility pole.
Correct.
Right. And that utility pole is on his side, his property.
I'm honestly not sure.
I'm not sure. Well, it certainly isn't in the driveway of Mr. Violet.
The telephone pole won't be in a driveway, correct?
All right, so he was not plowing snow into the driveway of Mr. Violet, right?
I don't know that.
Well, you do know that. You looked at the videos. You had an opportunity to speak with him. I mean, just photographs. I mean, the whole thing.
Yes, I've watched the video. I can't, personally, I'd have to rewatch it, the video to see if the snow ended up going into the driveway or not.
You recall no such thing happening.
From the vantage point of the camera, I couldn't tell you if the snow ended up in the driveway.
And the jury has access to the videos as well. I'll let you know.
Okay.
All right, but you wanted to know what the contact was with this guy and what happened that night. And he told you that he had just gotten home from picking up his daughter.
Correct.
And that he was a plow guy. He was plowing, and he had a black truck. And he was doing cleanups all day.
Yes.
And he says he's starting to move snow. And all of a sudden, something's going on. He's going outside and he's locking up his house, right?
Yes.
Can you tell the jury how he explained that to you, what that was all about?
Yes. So he basically said he has to manually lock the hub, so he would have to get out of his vehicle to basically activate the four-wheel drive in his vehicle.
Right, it was mechanical, it wasn't electronic, it was something he had to actually do manually.
Correct.
He explained that to you.
Yes.
And if you look at the video that the jury has had access to, that would be him bending over near the front of his truck.
That would be consistent with what he's explaining, yes.
And then he describes what happened. He says, all of a sudden, he came from his driveway, which is 43 Summer Street. Now, this would be meaning Kyle Violet.
That's my understanding, yes.
And he describes him as having no shirt on. He put his shirt on. He was yelling at me that he's going to fucking kill me. Fucking kill my family if I put snow in front of his driveway.
Yes.
That's what he said. Now, this comes out of nowhere, right? He tells you this is like, comes out of nowhere.
Essentially, yes.
And he says he looked at him, and then Kyle gets in his face, and Jason's saying he can't believe what's going on, right?
Is there a specific line that you're asking for?
Line 18, page 18.
18. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, it's okay. Basically says I just kind of looked at him. He got in my face even further that I didn't believe him that he's going to fucking kill me and my family.
Yes.
And he says, I don't even know this guy. Right?
Correct.
But he goes on to explain something else. What else does he explain?
Is there a specific line?
You approach?
Thank you. What he explained to you was that this individual came at him across the driveway, correct?
Yes.
And he came at him unannounced, and it was a mystery to Jason as to why he came at him.
He did mention, having reread 18, about that he did move snow into the front part of his driveway of his neighbor to where his neighbor's grass was, and then he backed up. But as far as the reason why he was coming out at that time, I'm not sure as far as what Jason thought.
But the impression and the clear communication he had with Jason was that he was surprised that such an activity took place.
I believe so, yes.
And when he came out, it was almost immediate that he was threatening Jason, he was threatening Jason's family, and in fact, Jason made it clear to you that his daughter was in the truck with him, right?
Yes, he indicated that his daughter was in the truck and that the other gentleman had come out and was making threats towards him.
Now, during direct, the prosecutor said that, and you somehow stated that it was a conditional threat.
Yes.
Well, it was a threat, right?
Yes.
Okay. And it was clear that the individual that was the aggressor would have been Kyle Violet, right?
He's the one that's coming out and making the conditional threat, yes.
He's the one coming out and not only saying things out of his mouth, but literally sticking his nose into Jason's cheek, right?
He got close. The video quality's not good enough to say that his nose touched his cheek from what I saw, but he definitely got close to him, yes.
Well, the jury's going to be able to run those videos over and over.
Yes.
In the deliberation room, and they were shown to the jury. And at one point, we counted the number of contacts that Kyle would have had
Okay.
with Jason.
So the video that I saw was the one that was taken from, I believe it was possibly the neighbor's apartment, coming from that angle across the driveway. That was the video that I watched.
So you weren't able to ascertain what was going on?
I could see that he gets up there, but as far as cheek touching, you can't tell from that video, no.
You could tell that Jason didn't make one step toward Violet, though, correct?
At which point in time?
At the
Sorry.
initial point.
At the initial point, it looked like he had just stood there, yes.
Yeah, he just stood there, and he stood there, and if Jason kind of described it as though he was like paralyzed or just standing still, that would be what you saw too.
That's what he said in his statement, yes.
Yeah. And that's what was on the video.
Yes.
And also what he said in the statement was that he didn't make a move toward Violet, but Violet made the move toward him.
For the initial interaction, yes.
Yeah. For the initial confrontation. Right?
Yes.
So it's clear, I just want to make this clear, because we're going to be moving down the road here a bit, that the initial aggressor would have been Violet, right?
The individual that came out of his house and started making a threat was Kyle Violet, yes.
Now, you'll agree with me, things can go fast in these situations. Right? I mean, it can go like a blur.
It can go fast, yes.
And we're not talking about a situation where somebody had a lot of time to roll over in their mind what to do and how to do it, right?
These are quick decisions, yes.
And we also know the background of Jason Levesque that day was one of an individual that was up over 40 hours, right?
I'm not sure what time exactly he got up, but he said that he had been plowing for over 24 hours.
I told you that he had gotten up, I think, at 8 o'clock the preceding day.
Do you have the page and I can reference?
It's all pain. He got up, he didn't have any sleep the preceding day from the time he got up.
Okay.
And we saw the video just moments ago of him needing to lay down.
Yes, he has to lay down.
And he also told you that he was tired because of the plowing and the time that he was up so long.
Yes.
And, he was offered food. Did he ever eat anything?
Yes, he ended up eating some chocolate.
A little bit of chocolate?
Yes.
Went like 2 Hershey's Kisses or something?
I don't remember exactly what he ate, sir.
And that would have been later on during the interrogation?
I'm not sure if he ate them during the interview or the interrogation part of it.
Okay. Now, he also attributed to Violet the fact that Violet had threatened him on more than one occasion that night, right?
In the initial, I believe he said that he had threatened him once, but then he may have repeated the same threat, possibly more than once throughout the night, yes.
Or other things, because he was saying he was screaming at him or yelling at him.
Is there a specific line that you're referencing?
He didn't have any specific recollection that evening, right?
I'm sorry, I don't understand the
Let me
question.
ask you something. Did you ever ask him, as you were moving through the interview, other than the initial threat, were there other threats that he made?
During the initial response, it was more open-ended. I let him just talk, and then there were some follow-up questions. As far as if there was a distinct question, I'm not sure.
But he was very concerned about another individual that was with him that evening, correct?
He was concerned about his daughter, yes.
Yeah, he was concerned about his 19-year-old daughter that was seated in the passenger seat, right?
Yes.
And in fact, he was concerned that Violet had threatened her as well, right?
The initial threat had threatened both him and his family, so that would include his daughter, yes.
Right. Now, he stated that, in fact, that his daughter was, in essence, petrified, right? Scared.
Is there a specific line that you're
I
referencing?
think it's 41. I think it's after you had said, and I don't want to get into. Question, please. Sure. Did he communicate to you that his daughter was afraid that night?
Yes.
Did he communicate to you that his daughter had gotten out of the truck briefly and then got right back in the truck during this altercation?
Is there a specific spot for that you're referencing? I don't recall that.
Okay, let me ask you this. When Violet is coming toward Jason, all right, walking towards him, and starts getting nose to nose, is she still in the cab?
He expressed to me, I believe, that she had stayed in the vehicle seatbelted the whole time. But if there's a time that I may be forgetting, if there's a specific spot you want to reference, then I can take a look.
No, that's fine. That's exactly the answer. And he also says that at this point in time, he felt overwhelmed, right?
I believe so, yes.
And that would have been when Violet literally was nose to nose with him.
Correct.
Now, did Jason claim to you that he had a perfect memory of what went on?
I don't believe he ever said that, no.
And let me ask you another general question. Did you ever think that maybe after you got a good night's sleep, you might want to actually sit down and have another interview with him?
That would be a conversation down the road, yes.
Did you ever attempt to reconnect with Jason, let's say the next day?
So I'm not sure. I'm trying to remember if that was the next day arraignment. Typically after they're arraigned, they would need attorney involved due to constitutional protections. But I didn't speak to him again after that, no.
No, I mean, did you reach out to anybody and say, let's get back together now that Jason's, recovered, gotten some sleep, and we'll go over his statement so he can review it and see if it's accurate. Did you ever do anything like that?
So I never spoke to him again after that initial interview.
Now, how many different angles of that video did you observe?
To my knowledge, I just remember watching the video from, at least in its entirety, the video from the neighbors. Other detectives might have had the cameras open at some point watching them, but that's the main one that I saw that night.
Okay, so that's the only angle and the only distance that you were able to ascertain contact, right?
That's the only video I remember watching that night before I interviewed him or interrogated him on that part.
Now, Jason tried to get it point by point with you. You'd agree with me that in such a situation, shortly after a traumatic event like that, he may actually have been inaccurate in some of the things he was telling you.
You're asking if he could be inaccurate when he's telling? Yes, he could certainly be inaccurate on details.
Yeah. I mean, when you take in the factors of the recency of the event, the shooting itself, the fact that he hadn't slept for about 40 hours, all these things should be taken into consideration.
Certainly, you got to take into effect people's amount of sleep. You got to take into effect the time, spatial distance between the event and when you're talking to somebody. But again, it was Jason that indicated that he wanted to tell me what had happened that night.
No, I get it. He said that when he was standing up, that's when he saw Kyle coming.
I believe so, yes.
Yeah, and I think on page 44 you said, so you stood up because you hear him yelling, a natural reaction.
Yes.
And Jason agrees.
Yes.
And then you said, and when you were overwhelmed, kind of described what your body was doing, how you were thinking, that kind of stuff. And he gave you an answer, right?
Yes.
And what was the answer?
He said, I kind of just froze, like I didn't know what he was going to do. I didn't know if he was going to come up to me. I didn't know what was going to happen.
So at that point in time, he didn't yell back at him or do anything, right? Right?
I don't believe so.
No, yes. So you never said anything back to him at this point?
Correct. And he said no, because I didn't want to escalate the situation or, irritate him or whatever you want to use for a word, but make it any worse.
Right, and you were actually asking this question to see what was going through his mind at the time of that contact, right?
Correct.
And at the time of that contact, he says, well, you say okay, and what does he say?
He says, again, my daughter's in the car. I don't know who this guy is. I still don't know who he is. I don't know what he's capable of. I just didn't want to have any type of problem with him.
And you agree, and then he answers, and he says what?
And obviously he seemed like he was ready to fight.
So that was the impression that you asked him to convey to you with regard to the initial contact, right?
I was asking, yes, what he was thinking, what his emotions, what his body felt like during the initial response, yes.
Right. And the initial response, in essence, was he was frozen, he was shocked, and he thought this guy was ready to fight.
That's what he expressed, yes.
And he was concerned about his daughter.
Yes, he also expressed that as well, yes.
He also goes on to indicate to you that at one point he walks away and then turns around. Right? I'll give you
Who are you
46.
referencing in that?
Page 46. And from the top down.
So I ask, is when he turned around, and how far away is that at that point? I'm not familiar with where and Mr. Levesque says, yeah, no problem, maybe 15 feet. So then I ask, okay, and so he turns around, and how's his body? What's he saying, that kind of stuff?
Okay, so you'd agree with me, if you look at the video, this beginning of the contact to the end of the contact with the last shot fired is about probably a total of 11 seconds, something like that.
It's fairly quick, yes.
And he says, what does he say when you say, what's he saying? That kind of stuff? What's his answer?
Sorry.
Line time.
Yes. Mr. Levesque says he's still very agitated. He's got his fists. He's very animated in how he's yelling. And just, he's going to fucking kill me and my family for moving snow, I guess.
Now, this whole conditional threat, he didn't say that when he turned around and said that it was a conditional threat. He said, he's going to fucking kill me and my family for moving snow, I guess. Right? So Kyle didn't say for moving snow, I guess, right?
He's explaining what happened. I don't know if he's actually saying verbatim like he did previously as far as what the threat was. I think he's paraphrasing more, but certainly he does say, and I can read it again, he's still very agitated. He's got his fists. He's very animated in how he's yelling, and just he's going to fucking kill me and my family for moving snow, I guess.
Now, the prosecutor asked you whether you heard anything on the video, any yelling or anything like that, right?
I believe so, yes.
I mean, did you guys do any kind of a scientific, test out there to determine whether or not you could even hear any yelling from that spot?
So, no. Again, my involvement for this was the arrest and assisting with some of the follow-up. That was my involvement with this case.
Okay. Do you know if any kind of a decibel reading was taken at or around 41 Summer Street at the location where yelling was claimed to have taken place? Not from the house, not from individuals running outside, but from that very spot.
Sure, I'm not sure how if someone's yelling, I don't see how that's relevant because people's voices could be higher distances. Depending on where they are, I don't see the relevance of it, but.
Well, I don't know. I mean, it was asked on direct.
Well, I didn't ask anything about decibel readings, Your Honor.
Did you hear yelling? Remember that on direct?
So you have should do your best to answer the question. So what about what's relevant, not relevant?
Sure, I don't remember it.
Answer the question that he asked.
I believe he asked about yelling, but I'm not positive, but I don't recall anything about decibels.
I didn't say, okay, let's forget the
So let's,
decibels.
yeah, we asked the question.
Let's take the decibels and throw that out. Okay.
You recall being asked about, did you hear any yelling? Right?
Is there a specific page?
No, it's not a specific.
Okay. Yeah, no, I don't recall.
Now, you agree that you said to him, and I'll guide you on this, it's the page that got cut off, I think, without the number. Might be 47. Basically, Jason was focused on Kyle, right? I'll give you a...
He talks about there's a female as well.
Yeah, he hears a female yelling, and that may very well have been Kyle's girlfriend that was yelling in that video. Right?
Oh, presumably, yes.
Now, let me ask you something, okay? I'm going to go through this checklist with you because I want to make sure that we don't paint Jason in some corner where he's trying to avoid answering questions. Okay? He's the guy that waited in his driveway for the police to show up, right?
After asked, from what I've heard, after asking if his daughter if he should run, yes, he waited in the driveway.
Well, I mean, he asked whether he should. I mean, you don't know. There were many other things. We'll get to that. That may, of course, been discussed in the cab of that truck, but he didn't run, right?
No, it didn't run.
Okay. Not only did he not run, he preserved the firearm and made it safe so that when police showed up, all right, it would be there for them in plain view in the cab of his truck, right?
Yes. This is what he told me.
When the officers arrived, he made sure that they knew he would be coming with them without resistance. In other words, he exited the truck with his hands on, right?
That would be a question for the other officers. I arrived on the scene after he was already in handcuffs.
Well, did you describe him as a cooperative individual when you were on your way to the station?
Yes, he was cooperative with me the entire time, yes.
Right. And this cooperative individual, in fact, did everything you asked him to do. He didn't resist one iota, right?
Not that I recall, no.
No, not at all. You got no reports of that at all, right?
I don't recall him not being cooperative. He was cooperative throughout.
Right. He told you where everything was. He said you could search his truck, right?
Yes.
He said you could seize his video equipment and videos from his home.
Yes.
He, when given the Miranda rights and the constitutional rights afforded to him, made a decision that he was going to speak with you, right?
Yes.
He was cooperative during the interrogation.
Yes.
I mean, he was basically sitting there as long as you wanted him to be there. Right?
He was willing to answer my questions and talk to me for as long as I had questions up until that point, yes. He never asked to stop or anything like that.
Right. You're the guy that terminated the interview, not him. He didn't say, I've had enough, I don't want to talk to you.
No, he never made a statement like that. As far as the termination, it was more, he was going downstairs to get fingerprinted and processed, I believe is how the interview kind of concluded.
Now this is, the backdrop of this is that you've got the guy that the jury saw in the video, but later on, about an hour later in fact, you start asking him questions again, like, can we go over, or what happened that night, right?
Yes, I would ask the same question a number of times in a number of different ways, yes.
And you wanted to swab his hands?
Yes.
Can you tell the jury what that's all about?
Yeah, so typically we'll do GSR kits. It's a gunshot residue kit. Basically, it just shows if you're in the presence of a firearm discharge or the equivalent. One of the questions on there is if you handled fireworks, because there might be some similar kind of chemicals or materials that you might handle that are similar in both.
Now, about an hour in, as you're going through this swabbing process, and this is after what the jury already saw, he tells you guys that he's not feeling so good, right?
Do you have a page reference?
79, 25.
Yes. I believe I was out of the room at that time.
Was there a trash barrel or something offered in case he vomited?
Again, I can look at the transcript and say that, but I was out of the room when that conversation occurred. That was with Detective Flathers.
At that point in time, though, does he express that he's overwhelmed and tired?
So he says, I don't feel so good, just a second. And Flathers asks, do you want a trash barrel or something? And Levesque says, no, I want to lay down too. And then I come back. And then he goes on when I get back in the room saying, just give me a second, I think I'm just overtired and overwhelmed.
Yeah, that's when Flathers says, do you think you want an ambulance?
Yes.
And he responds, I'm overtired and I'm overwhelmed. Right?
Yes.
This is about an hour or so after what the jury just saw in that day.
So I returned with the swab kit into the room at 11:42 p.m.
About an hour. And he says there's a lot going on. Right?
Yes.
And he says, I'm trying to stay calm and focused, but sometimes I just get, I don't know. And I guess your partner says, like a little rush, and Levesque says, yeah. Hot, cold, I don't know. And I apologize if I stink. I feel like I just smell awful. Right?
Yes.
And that's because he had been working all day, hadn't had the opportunity to clean up.
Correct.
And then you go through the hand swab, correct?
Yes.
How long of a process is that?
It's relatively quick. They have basically almost like the kid stamps where you're just stamping around different portions of the hands and then filling out a page that kind of asks them a few questions as well. But it's not a long process.
And he was cooperative through that, right?
Yes.
And you're trying to understand exactly what's going on, and he's telling you that there's some gray area with regard to what he's telling you, and that's on page 117, lines 23, 24, 25. Right?
One moment. So he says, right, so I don't know if maybe there's a gray area, and that's what I think happened. And I just don't remember, I don't know.
But he's willing to stick around and continue to answer questions. And this is when you're actually asking him to rethink some of the things he's already said to you. Right?
I'm asking, yes, if he basically has a tactic to ask him if, maybe the first story of events, you were just still in shock, so you weren't trying to mislead or lie to us or anything like that.
Right. In fact, you tell him that. He's saying, I'm being completely honest with you, and you say, maybe the first story of events, like maybe you were just still in shock. And he goes, yes, or right, correct?
Yes, as part of an interrogation tactic, you can offer someone an opportunity to save face. If you tell somebody you're lying, sometimes that shuts somebody down and they won't talk to you anymore. So you give them an opportunity, a way out to still be able to communicate, still be able to talk to you without basically giving them no alternative.
Yeah, I mean, that's lovely, but that alternative wasn't offered to him when he had gotten a good night's sleep, right?
He had indicated that he still wanted to talk. So as far as asking if he wanted sleep, I didn't ask him if he wanted to stop to have sleep at that point in time. We were in the middle of the interrogation or beginning the interrogation at that point.
Or if inviting him to take a look at his statement and make any corrections.
Yeah, so he did ask me if he could review his prior statement, and there's a reason why, again, we do these spatial gaps. It's harder to remember all the lies that you're telling if there's a little bit of gap in between. Also, again, asking questions different ways. There's, some benefits of having that space.
Is it a good tactic to interview and interrogate people that are sleep deprived?
Again, Mr. Levesque indicated that he was willing to do the interview. He was in no obligation to do so. I read him his Miranda rights. It was his decision to speak with me.
Yeah, I'm glad that's the answer you're giving me, but is it a good tactic to interview people that are sleep deprived? Is that part of the tactics that you guys have?
As far as that, we don't typically go out seeking people that are sleep deprived. It's just the circumstances of events. He had been out plowing that whole night. We don't choose that, that he was out that whole day. That was the hand that was given to us, so that's what we had to work with.
But that's a hand that you can reshuffle, right? That's a hand where you can say, hey, we'll come back at 8 o'clock in the morning and talk. We'll come back at 10 o'clock in the morning and talk.
Again, no one was forcing Mr. Levesque to talk to us.
Nobody's forcing him. But would you take a neutral witness and say, hey, I know you haven't slept 40 hours, but I want you to give me a statement? Or would you say, would you like to have some sleep? And then give me an accurate statement.
Again, if he's willing to talk to us that night, we're trying to figure out what had happened that night. We're going to talk to him. If at any point in time he indicated to me that he would rather speak to me the next day, so maybe that would be something that we could revisit.
Well, you saw the guy nodding off right in front of you, didn't you?
So even during the daytime, during arrests, we do have people nodding off. We have people, in booking that could be lying down. It's not uncommon for people to lie down on benches just during day shift, during the middle of the day. So that's not super uncommon.
Super uncommon. But the jury got to see what he looked like. He's bedraggled, isn't he?
They certainly got to see what he looked like. What was the question? Sorry, I missed the last part.
Yeah. I know that you may say it's not super uncommon, but are you saying that it's a good tactic to interview witnesses to get an accurate story when they have not had slept for 40 hours? Is that a good environment to get an accurate statement? Honest.
It's still fresh in his memory. I think there's still some benefit of talking to him then. Certainly, again, revisiting once you get a full night's sleep, you might be able to get some additional information. Right. But again, at that point, he would have been arraigned.
In your interview, towards the end, and I've been asking you, why didn't you reconnect with him when he slept? Let's get the tape. he indicated on page 152, we're already up to 1:47:40 a.m. So he's been in there quite a while, right?
Yes, again, the whole interview was about, well, my whole response was about 3 hours and 48 minutes, give or take.
Did you ever indicate to him that this was not the end-all and be-all, and that you can always touch base again? Page 150, line 21.
Yeah, so I said, and this isn't the be-all, end-all. If you think of something after, we can always touch base again, but we'll take another break. And he goes, yep.
Take another break. He basically says he needs a little rest on 151, line 23. Right?
Yes, that was near the...
And Levesque puts his head down on the table. Right?
Near the end of the interview, yes, he put his head down on the table.
He's exhibiting exhaustion, isn't he?
Yes.
He's not saying he wouldn't talk to you again. In fact, he kind of dangled it out there.
Yes, I indicated that he could reapproach us and talk to us. Again, if he's tired, this might be the only opportunity that we have to speak with him. Once this hits the news, once he's arraigned, once he has an attorney, there's a very low likelihood that we're ever going to get another chance to speak with him. So, yes, I did speak with him.
I know he did. And again, he made no invitations afterwards.
Again, it was said right there, the line you had me read, that this wasn't the be-all, end-all. If he would like to speak with us again, certainly we can reapproach.
Or if you would like to speak with him.
If there's other questions, yes, that we had.
And again, you didn't ever send out that invitation, did you?
I did not know.
Now, he's repeated to you on a number of occasions that he's trying to give you the best description that he can. I mean, I can go through a number of pages, but I'll just randomly pick them out. Page 117, starting at line 11.
So Mr. Levesque says, yeah, I've been completely honest with you about the whole thing to the best of my knowledge, to the best of what I can remember. That being said, I don't remember correctly, or I'm not giving the right account of it, but it's hard to try and give the best description of it if, you know what I mean? Like, to break it down slowly like we did.
Right. And you said, yeah, like I said, he says, I'm being completely honest with you. This is on 118. You say maybe the first story of events, like maybe you're just still in shock, right?
Yes, again, it's offering that safe face opportunity, that maybe he wasn't telling the truth the first time, but here's your opportunity to tell us what had happened.
Well, maybe the truth is a little hard, don't you think, Detective? Maybe he wasn't being completely accurate because he was exhausted too, right?
Tiredness could certainly have an impact, yes.
And in fact, you told him, so you weren't trying to mislead us or lie to us or anything like that. And Levesque shakes his head no. In fact, you continue with him and you say, I don't think, again, I think you're intentionally lying to us or anything like that. I think it was just, an honest mistake, that first version of events, and Levesque goes right. And he sticks with you and he says, let's go through it again, basically, right? I mean, he's telling you, take my video. He brings it up to you. Right? On 118.
So on 118, he goes, if I wouldn't go, hey, I have some video of, and again, the whole situation, like.
Yeah. He's trying, right?
Trying to what, sorry?
Be honest and complete
Objection,
with
Your
you.
Honor. It's wholly speculative.
He's telling you that, and you're telling him that on page 119.
What his claims are concerning his honesty versus whether he's being
May I ask you next question?
You told him that the most important thing in his life was his daughter, right?
Something to that effect, yes.
And he agreed, right?
Yes.
And this is the same daughter that he had articulated concerns about during this whole interaction.
Yes.
Same one he picked up that evening, and the same one that was in the cab while they were being approached by Kyle Violet.
Yes, while he was being approached by Kyle Violet, she was in the vehicle, yes.
Was there other procedures that took place that he was cooperative with that night? And I'll go through a couple.
Okay.
Fingerprinting?
Again, I didn't do the fingerprinting, so I'm assuming he was cooperative, but that's only an assumption. I can't tell you that for certain.
Right. But there were no reports that he had any problems with any other police officers that evening.
I never heard of him having an issue with fingerprinting.
If I could have 1 second.
Yes.
Thank you.
Counsel, redirect?
You had been asked about tactics for interviewing, interrogating people. What's the objective of any tactic that you use?
To receive an accurate, honest answer.
And is it included in your tactic to determine whether or not somebody's being straight up and honest with you?
There's definitely some consideration. You're interpreting what they say and trying to determine whether they're being honest, yes.
Well, let me put it this way. Would you lay out all the evidence in an investigation before you ask somebody questions about their claims concerning events?
No, it's actually better to let people continually tell a lie. That way you have more foundation to basically cross some of the statements that they're making to determine what's accurate, what's not.
Similarly, do you think it's a good tactic to get honest and complete answers and to test credibility by affording a suspect an opportunity to, for example, consult with other people, review evidence that they may have available to them before approaching them to question them?
No, with that being said, though, certainly give them the opportunity if they want to confer with an attorney or a lawyer. But as far as if they're willing to talk to us, we're going to ask the questions and try and get the accurate information, yes.
And in fact, we'd referred to Miranda. Did you give him an opportunity to consult with a lawyer before talking to you?
Yes.
And did he waive that right and agree to talk to you?
Yes.
Concerning his fatigue and whatnot, was he accurate, for instance, in describing where these events occurred?
Yes.
Was he accurate in describing what he was doing, his activity prior to these events?
Yes.
Was he accurate in describing certain very specific details, like Kyle putting on a hoodie that was green or camo walking out of his driveway?
Yes.
And was he accurate in terms of disclosing to you how many rounds he shot into Kyle Violet's body?
He was accurate on how many shots he fired.
There were some other things, though. Attorney Sisti asked you about a section where you're saying, I believe you're not lying to me. Were you sharing your opinion about his credibility with him, or was that a tactic?
Again, it's a tactic. My opinions on the matter are kind of irrelevant. We're trying to figure out the truth of the matter. So giving him again outs, giving him some belief that we're believing what he's saying is another tactic basically that you can use.
And that point at about 151 in the transcript where Attorney Sisti was asking you questions where you're sharing, I don't think you were trying to lie to us. Is that after you had disclosed that you actually had seen and obtained a video of this scene?
I believe that was after we referenced the video. I'd have to see what page I talked to the... 1 second. Presumably saying it's near the end of the interview or interrogation, rather, I would say yes.
Can you take a look at approximately 99, line 24, where it appears to be the first time you actually call him out and say, would it surprise you that you're actually moving towards him after he claimed that he wasn't?
Yeah, so I asked, would it surprise you if you had moved towards him? And he asked, would it surprise me? And I responded, yeah. And he goes, and then I go, or to your recollection, you were pretty stationary with your feet. And Mr. Levesque responds, I don't believe I did.
And at that point, when you say, would it surprise you that you were actually moving towards you, is it at that point about that you had had an opportunity to review the first video?
Yes, I would have had, let me see when the break was. Do you know what page that I stepped out of the room?
I do.
See context.
I'm sorry, with our current technical shutdown, I was unable to print out that section. But when you refer to would it surprise you, how would you know whether he was walking forward or not?
Yeah, so I mean that's an indicator that I likely had watched the video at that point if I'm referencing that in that kind of language.
Attorney Sisti pointed out something at about page 90, whatever, that the defendant brought up cameras. But can you turn to page 66?
Yes.
And 30 pages earlier. Page 66, line 18. Is that you asking, do you have any cameras that can cover any of the interaction tonight?
Yes.
Is that you bringing up potential video footage of this evening in the first instance?
Yes.
Let's talk then about some of the details that came up here. The Attorney Sisti had asked, suggested, frankly, that Mr. Levesque didn't have any idea what was going on when the victim, Kyle, approached. Can I direct your attention to page 18, line 8?
Okay.
I think at one point you had started to share this information that Jason Levesque had acknowledged. Can you read what it is he said he had done just prior to Kyle coming out?
Yes, so Mr. Levesque says, I drive, started moving the snow. I had moved the snow into the front part of the driveway of my neighbor to where my neighbor's grass is, and I backed up. And I'd gotten out to put it in four-wheel drive. It's the old style manual hubs. You have to lock them in.
Okay. So he characterized where he had just put snow and that he was continuing this job of moving snow from his driveway by back pulling it into the street.
Correct.
We don't have any, again, I don't want to nickel and dime this, but we don't have any idea where he was going to put all the snow that came out from his driveway.
No.
And this, we talked about it, but this conditional threat, I want to be clear on this point. You had confirmed earlier that Jason Levesque stated this was, quote, in his own word, verbatim and exactly what was said. That's at page 36, line 18 to 20. Can you repeat that?
Yes, sir. So Mr. Levesque says, yeah, he said, if you put that fucking snow at the end of my fucking driveway, I'm going to fucking kill you and kill your fucking family.
Concerning, you revisited that, and did that ever change in terms of him predicating his threat with moving the snow again in front of his driveway or his house or his property?
To my understanding, the threats all the time were regarding the snow removal.
And at any point, did, I get, these words, and your family, at any point did Jason Levesque claim it concerned specifically, and I know that daughter's included in a family, did ever specifically mention his daughter as part of the threat?
Not that the threat was specific to his daughter, it was to your family. He did bring up, or we did discuss his daughter at one point during the interview, but the threat itself was your family.
And did Jason Levesque ever claim that Kyle focused his attention on Kira in the cab of that truck?
He did not.
Did he ever claim that Kyle Violet was even aware that Kira was in the cab of the truck?
I don't believe he brought that up, no.
This description of him being nose to nose and making this threat kind of in his face, and he was overwhelmed, is that the point that Jason Levesque shot Kyle Violet?
No. Kyle had walked away from Mr. Levesque prior to that.
And after he walked away, page 43, line 16, can you share with us how Mr. Levesque characterized the continuing, conversation?
Mr. Levesque says, I don't know if he repeated it again before he started walking off. And then for some reason, he stopped and turned around and said, you don't fucking believe me? And he came back at me again.
And his claim about how far Mr. Violet came, does he share that? Is that where he's saying he's within 3 to 5 feet from him?
Possibly at one part of the interview, not
Okay.
close temporarily to that statement.
The questions have been about, accuracy. We had already talked on our first direct that he had claimed he shot him, didn't know whether he hit him the first time because he only flinched.
That's what he said, yes.
Okay. Did he appear, sort of overwhelmed by fatigue when he was making that statement to you? Or did you ask for details surrounding that event?
No, I asked for details for most of the interactions that he had with Kyle that night, so I would go into further detail. Once he made a statement, I would clarify, ask for more detail.
And likewise, when he made claims that he put 5 more rounds into Mr. Violet and Mr. Violet merely turned and walked away, were you able to ask details that he was responsive, questions about details that he was responsive to?
Yes, and he told me in a gist that he had continued to walk away holding his abdomen.
Locked. Concerning, some of these questions, follow-up questions about details, did that include asking him to do a sketch?
Yes.
Your Honor may approach.
This can go in his full.
Move the strike.
2728 or full exhibit?
They show you what's been now marked as a state's full exhibit, 27 and 28, and ask whether you can identify that.
So these look like copies of the drawings that I asked Mr. Levesque to draw when the first shot went off and then the second round of shots that went off.
And so you've labeled these first and second, is that what you mean by first round of shot and second round of shots?
They're labeled first and second. That might be his handwriting. I might have asked him to label it.
That's what I mean.
Yes.
And so can you just, for the record, state to the jury where Mr. Levesque claimed he was standing, to describe it by other aspects of the drawing, during the second round, and where he claimed Kyle was standing?
Yeah, so based on the drawing, it looks like Mr. Levesque is towards the driver's side front, well, it's the side, but it's near the front tire on the driver's side. And then Mr. Violet is closer to 41, like halfway in the drawing there.
Understood. And, the defense attorney, Mr. Attorney Sisti, had asked you about this area where, Jason, after you said, hey, look, I've seen some video, maybe you're mistaken. Maybe there's some gray area here. Is it your recollection that any of those mistakes, that Kyle remained standing, that he didn't react to being shot the first time, any of those mistakes sort of favor a claim of self-defense?
I'm going to object.
I'll withdraw.
The fact of the matter is that Jason brought up the subject matter of the video cameras early in your interview with him, right? I'll refer you to page 25.
Thank you. Yes.
Right, and that's why you knew to ask him about cameras, see page 66, right? Line 15.
Yes, I asked him about the outside cameras.
Yes, you asked him. You mentioned from the prior event from 2 months ago, there were cameras out, right?
Yes.
Okay, so you didn't come up with this request out of thin air. He already gave up that he had video cameras much earlier on in this interview.
Yes.
Now, would you agree with me that Jason was accurate when he claimed that Violet initiated the contact on April 4th?
He's the one that walked across the driveway yelling out to Jason, yes.
Okay, so that's a yes. And would you agree with me that Violet stuck his face into Jason's face?
I would agree with you that he got very close to him based on the video that I saw, yes.
Would you agree with me that Violet appeared to be agitated?
Yes.
Would you agree with me that Jason said that after the event he parked the truck, stayed there and waited for police response?
Yes.
Would you agree with me that he left the firearm and he left it safe on the dashboard of the truck?
I would agree with you that he left the firearm in the truck.
Now, he never told you that he was able to specifically count the number of rounds that came out of the firearm. It's just that the magazine was empty, right?
He told me at one point that he had 5 + 1 and that he emptied the magazine.
Right. So it's a matter of doing math, not specific recollection of each trigger pull, correct?
I don't recall if he ever specifically said, I'd have to look if there's a page that you're referencing that would be helpful.
I don't have a page.
Okay.
Now, you know, Kara Violet was a witness too, right? You know his daughter was a witness,
Yes.
and she was interviewed, right?
Not by myself.
No. But do you know whether or not she was sleep deprived or anything like Jason was?
I do not.
Do you know what she claimed to hear?
Objection, Your Honor, calls for hearsay speculation.
I'm not asking for the answer. I'm asking whether or not he knows what she heard. The answer is yes or no.
Objection to relevant.
Any further? You do understand that Kara is a witness as well, correct?
Yes.
And again, you never approached her and interviewed her?
Judge, same objection.
I'm just asking whether he did that. Thank you. And I looked at your entire transcript. Did you ask Jason if there were any other threats that night? Any other threats? Other than the ones that he had related?
I don't recall.
Did you ask him, instead of speculating about the snow, did you ask him where he was going to plow the snow?
He had brought up, as far as the initial where he moved snow, as far as he said he was going to back drag the driveway. I didn't ask him where that snow was going to go, no.
No, but wasn't that a big subject of contention, that the snow was going to go over to Violet's driveway?
That's the initial reason why Violet came out.
And that's a question you never even asked Jason, as to where he was going to plow the snow.
That doesn't necessarily change as far as
Sir,
You can answer.
No, he can't. He's not being responsive.
I'm not arguing. I'm not arguing. Allow me to answer the question. So if the objection is overruled, you can answer the question.
Answer the question.
Can you ask the question?
Was, did you ever ask him where the snow was going to go, basically, correct?
Correct.
Yes or no question?
No.
Thank you.
Anything further?
Just very briefly.
I understand. Very short.
Thank you.
Reading correct.
You had asked for a page number concerning, whether Jason Levesque was aware of how many times he discharged the firearm. I'm going to ask you to look at page 54, line 16. Question, that's what it should be.
So I asked him, okay, do you remember how many times the trigger was pulled? And he responded, yeah, 6 times. Thank you.
Any specific questions directly to that?
I will go right to it, Judge. Did you ask him how he knew it was told?
So I asked him after that, okay, so you fully emptied the clip at that point? And he nodded his head in affirmative.
So he did the math.
I can't answer that question. I don't know what was on his mind.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Appreciate it. State, do you have any further witnesses to call?
Your Honor, based on this evidence, the state press.
Okay. So ladies and gentlemen, if you recall back in my initial instructions when I explained to you how a trial was going to go, I explained to you that the state puts on their case first, and when the state is done presenting their evidence, they then rest. So the state has now rested. As I explained to you previously, the defense does not have to put on a case if they do not want to. It's the defense's decision as to whether they will present any evidence at all, because the burden rests on the state to prove the defendant guilty beyond a reasonable doubt, and the defendant doesn't have to prove anything. Given that it's 4:05 at this point, I think we're going to end for the evening. So we'll leave you in a bit of suspense, and then we'll see in the morning when we come back. That's when the defense will decide whether they are presenting a case or not. Again, as I explained, it's completely up to them. It's their choice. And then the case will proceed forward after that, as we explained. So have a good evening. All of my prior instructions remain in place.